Okay, so get ready because we're diving into something pretty big today. The expat exodus from Hong Kong.
Mm,
We've got some really interesting articles here from the South China Morning Post, CNA, and the Asia Times.
interesting stuff.
And well, you might be surprised at just how much things are changing over there.
Yeah, it's
Let's talk some
talking.
numbers that could like totally reshape the future of Hong Kong.
Yeah, definitely a trend worth looking into for sure. We're not just talking about, a handful of people packing up and leaving. This is looking like a pretty significant shift in how expats are feeling about Hong Kong these days.
Yeah, for sure. And one recent survey actually said that over 40% of expats are thinking about leaving Hong Kong.
Wow, that's wild, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
So what's behind all of this? Is Hong Kong losing its shine?
Well, there are a few things going on here, but the big one seems to be the national security law that was implemented back in 2020.
Right.
A lot of expats are citing that as a major reason for wanting to leave. In
Oh,
fact, 62%.
that's a big chunk of them. Yeah, it's a big deal.
So what is it about this national security law that's making everyone so nervous?
Right. So basically, the law is meant to prevent and punish any actions that threaten national security, like secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces.
Gotcha.
The government says it's absolutely necessary to keep the country safe, but a lot of people, especially expats, are worried that it's being used to silence dissent and restrict freedoms.
Yeah, I can see how that would be concerning.
Right. It's understandable that they'd feel uneasy. They came to Hong Kong for a certain way of life, and now they're not sure what the future holds.
So it's not so much the law itself, but the feeling that Hong Kong is becoming a different place than it used to be.
Exactly. And then on top of all that, you've got the really strict COVID-19 measures that were in place for a while.
Right.
The lockdowns, travel restrictions, all that.
I bet that didn't help.
Not really. It created this feeling of isolation and made things really difficult for a lot of people.
Especially when you're already feeling uncertain about the political situation.
Exactly. So you can see why some expats might start to feel like it's time to move on.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you mentioned the COVID restrictions. Almost half of the expats in that survey also said that those were a big concern for them.
Yeah, and it's not hard to see why, especially the quarantine rules. Those were really tough on people.
Right.
They were meant to protect public health, of course, but they also really disrupted people's lives, their businesses, their social lives, even access to education.
Yeah, it must have felt like things were changing really fast.
It was a lot to handle, for sure.
So all of this must have had some kind of impact on Hong Kong's economy, right?
Absolutely. The sectors that rely on expat spending and talent are definitely feeling the pinch.
Okay, so like what specifically?
Well, take the rental market, for example.
Yeah.
Expats used to be the main drivers of the high-end rental market, but now they only make up about 25% of renters.
Whoa, that's a huge drop.
It is.
What about other areas? Are there any other industries that are being affected?
International schools are another good example. A lot of them are struggling with declining enrollment because expat families are leaving.
Right.
And that has a ripple effect on the whole education sector.
Yeah, it's like one thing leads to another.
Exactly. Fewer expats means less demand,
Right.
which can lead to job losses, business closures. It's a really complex situation with a lot of consequences.
It sounds like it. So we've got expats leaving, but at the same time, there's another big shift happening, right?
That's right. Mainland Chinese residents now make up 80% of the net inflow of people into Hong Kong.
Wow. So is that just a natural migration pattern, or is the government encouraging this?
It's a bit of both, I'd say. There's definitely a natural flow of people coming from the mainland looking for opportunities.
Right.
But the government is also actively trying to attract people from mainland China with initiatives like the Top Talent Pass scheme.
Ah, okay. Can you explain that one for folks who might not know what that is?
Huh. Sure. So it's basically a program designed to bring in high earners and top graduates from around the world, but they're especially focused on attracting talent from mainland China.
Interesting.
They offer streamlined visa processes and all sorts of incentives to get these folks to come live and work in Hong Kong.
Hmm. So it sounds like Hong Kong is trying to shift its focus a bit,
Mm-hmm.
maybe become less reliant on Western expats and more integrated with mainland China.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. This demographic shift is going to reshape the cultural landscape of Hong Kong in a big way.
How so?
Well, we're already seeing changes in things like the language used in business settings, the kinds of restaurants and shops that are popular. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
So the big question is, can Hong Kong hold on to its unique identity?
Mhm.
Will it still be that global financial hub, that bridge between East and West?
That's the million-dollar question, I guess.
Yeah.
These decisions that are being made now are going to have long-term consequences for Hong Kong's global image and its competitiveness.
And this is something that our listeners should be paying attention to, because what happens in Hong Kong affects the whole world.
Absolutely.
It's a major financial center. It attracts talent from all over the globe. It's a cultural melting pot.
Yeah,
The changes that are happening there have implications for everyone.
I agree.
So as you're reading the news about Hong Kong, think about these things. Think about how these shifts might impact the global stage. It's a really fascinating case study in globalization and the evolving relationship between East and West.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.